Hello and welcome in the podcast, your weekly briefing about sciences and UAPs. We have plenty of work ahead of us, so let me begin by the last that has been released, the last interview by Lue Elizondo. Lue Elizondo in this interview defines himself as an intelligence officer to George Knapp, investigative reporter, here on Coast to Coast. Coming to light in 2017 for him was pretty unnerving. And the same people that prevented him to reach out to Defense Secretary Mathis are the same that are trying to shoot him down now. People in his former office, the OUSDI, are trying to erase his work in the DoD. This is a long game, and he doesn't expect it to finish soon. Christopher Mellon was being briefed by Elizondo on UAPs and was instrumental in conveying the information to the higher echelon. Many things are happening inside the IG investigation of the DoD, and the future release should be interesting. The director of Elizondo didn't know Elizondo was running ATIP and is one of the main brokers, and he's still there giving direction to Susan Gough, DoD spokesperson, but he is not alone in his work. Elizondo wants to make people aware that many of the best analysts in the intelligence community are working together into solving what is and why is the phenomenon here. He has many things planned for 2022, including his book that he is writing right now. Towards the end of the discussion, they talk about the documents released by Knapp and Corbel last year about the drone incursion in over the west coast of the United States. Elizondo said that, saying that the pictures revealed by this journalist are drones, Chinese or Russian, is equivalent to stupidness. There was no drones in the 50s when the same UFOs were observed. There are sometimes misidentification, but the technological level is still far behind. Concerning military cases, he thinks not even 5% has been told yet. Regarding the IOMSG, the DoD UFO public office, it has been created by the OUSDI, and that same office is the main blocker on the investigation on UAPs. This office has no effective power, so he thinks that it's just a way to control the narrative. He also thinks that the Director of National Intelligence, Avril Haines, will not follow the Department of Defense and will find another solution to deal with the phenomenon. In the meantime, Congress isn't done and is aware of what is being done by the DoD. For 2022, they are creating advisory boards, one academic, one scientific, one technological, to guide policymakers about decisions to make on UAPs. He would like to prioritize sociology, for example. He declares that UFOs are real. The next question is, what will we do when contact will be made? That is a very interesting sentence. Will we be running for the hill, extending a welcoming arm, or pointing a rifle? Regarding cooperation between various states, he states that nobody will share their technologies, but over time, this topic has the potential of bridging nations. European countries have started to reach out, and Japan has declared its intentions toward international cooperation. That's the most broadsword I can give of this interview that is quite interesting. Next part is the Sweden wave. Above above Sweden, these past few days, there has been sighting of unidentified drones. You have here two articles by the Warzone that gives you a complete analysis of the situation based on reports on site from Sweden newspapers. So, various drones, pretty large, around 2 meters wide, have been sighted above and near nuclear power plants in the country. These drones seem unaffected by strong winds that are blowing on site and have evaded police helicopters sent for interception. So these actions takes place in a geopolitical context that is nearly probably the most explosive since the end of the Cold War. Here you can see a map showing Allied forces patrolling the air these past few days. You can see the density of the preparation in case of conflicts toward Ukraine and Sweden. So, next part is an interview given by John B. Alexander, Lieutenant Colonel. For him, the easy part of the phenomenon are the crafts. He refers often in the interview to the case of Bledsoe. So, if you're interested by Bledsoe, I can recommend that you watch this interview in its entirety. That will be the most eloquent to you. He mentioned that he talks to a director of a three-letter agency that could potentially investigate the subject. But while the director was a witness of the phenomenon, he declared that his agency would never work on such things. So next we have Ross Coulthart that has given 3 interviews the past few days. Let me find the interviews. Not in the right. So for the first interview, the one you see given to Generation Z, he wants to make clear that a blurry picture isn't proof of an UFO. The stigma is still very active in all armies, including France. He's encouraged and supported by his contacts to do this work of disclosure. For him, the GNI reports is the most in-depth stance taken by any government in any time. And there is a distinct possibility that these crafts are extraterrestrials. What reassures him is that it's not the ufological community that is disconnected from reality, but mass media. If today you are witness of a phenomenon, insist that you must act as an investigator of your own case. You can refer to forms given by the international organization, the MUFON, that can guide you into investigating your own case. A blurry picture is just not enough today. More and more people contact him to give him his testimony, but he just doesn't have the resources to treat every case. We are at the forefront of mankind. We are the forefront of big reveals to come. He quotes President Obama, that has hinted that we must work on that subject. And President Trump, that has declared that he has been briefed on the Roswell case. Regarding the Department of Defense, when the Pentagon wanted to receive some questions, he tells the journalists what to say. If journalist asks questions he doesn't want to hear, he just cuts the feed of information. Regarding the recent papers published by the Liberation Times about a shadow figure seen entering a nuclear base, he thinks that we have today a technological level that fits that type of camouflage. Besides that, media still don't want to talk about it. So you have a complete interview by him that I highly recommend, and another one given to Disclosure Team. The next one is an interview when you can find Garry Nolan explaining how a special type of radar can see through the warp bubbles used by UAPs. He talks about a quantum radar that entangles two photons to scan a plane, and it prevents spoofing because noise can't interfere with quantum entanglement. Regarding his work on UFOs, he just makes tools to gather data and gather data. Its theories for him are pointless because any theory can be debunked. So here you have the other interview between Vinny from Disclosure Team and Ross Coulthart. And then you have a very boxy interview between Chris Hadfield and Yonden Lhatoo. I felt pity for Chris Hadfield. He was really assaulted in this interview because Chris Hadfield is a former astronaut. He has been commander of the ISS, and Yonden Lhatoo called the ISS a rust bucket. Interestingly enough, the point of view of Chris Hadfield this past month considerably changed. If you go back to his declaration in the summer, he completely put aside extraterrestrial life. Today, he openly talks about it, saying it's a possibility to explain UFOs, even if he insists that none of his circle of contacts has been a witness to a UFO. So a pretty interesting interview if you want to see the geopolitical tensions between China and the US. Here you have a post by John Greenwald talking about how the CIA declared the loss of a very important document regarding materials correlated to UFO.
What's up, guys? Chris.
Here you have an interview between Leslie Kean and Chris Lehto. Leslie Kean returns on her past with 2017's articles on the Cometa report, and then explains her future plans a TV show will be held in 2022.
In this video,
Disclosure team says that that a confidential source told him that there was high tensions between the Department of Defense and Congress towards the control of the UFO office. He gives a rendezvous in 1 year to check if his source is right or wrong. Here you have an interesting article in phys.org that try to conciliate pure astronomy and UFO research. It's a very interesting article to see the idea colliding inside it and not being resolved. You have then this week, the past week technically, 3 articles from Liberation Times. You have the testimony of Adrian Reister, former nuclear technician on Whitehead Air Force Base, that saw the shadow figure we talked about. Then you have the status update on the Titan project for San Marino. San Marino is introduced to a project that wants to push it towards presenting a resolution to the United Nations and trying to establish an annual meeting about UFOs in San Marino. Next part is an analysis by Christopher Sharp, still in Liberation Times, about the struggles currently of having the Department of Defense and unelected officials trying to master the narrative about UAP research. Something that have been very well commented in UFO Twitter, an interview given by Frank Milburn, where he explains the hypothesis hypothesis to explain the phenomenon that his very highly knowledgeable sources told him. It's time travel, and he explained in this interview how time travel can be an accurate account of how UFOs and close encounters takes place. Next, you have an interesting article by Christopher Plain on the debrief that demonstrates how new metamaterials can react to environment without a computer control. It could allow new types of technology and impervious to spoofing, for example. So you have an interview by Representative Ruben Gallego on a starting point. I can't recommend enough this interview. If you have someone that is undecided towards the phenomenon, show him this interview. It was taken January 12. It's a perfect interview. It explains everything, every base of the phenomena, and it's given by a figure of authority. So a very, very, very short interview, but very interesting to act as political power and as a front to push the subject forward. You have then, still last week, an interesting video given by Sabine Hossenfelder. She's a German physicist, and list the different warp bubbles that can be used theoretically to move faster than conventional propulsion, and tries to elaborate a chart of plausibility and functionality of different technologies. Very, very interesting video. You have then an article published by Sean Cahill that drove a portrait of Lue Elizondo from his side, and how in 1 year the subject evolved, and hinting what will happen next. My favorite is this article that you can find on the Financial Times. It's a letter that answers a previous article written by John Thornhill. This letter is written by Douglas Fakosh, president of MIT International, and he answers why hiding isn't an answer. A very, very elegant way of looking at things, where in any case we have just leaked too many signals to now decide to hide, so there is no point in hiding, to be honest. Very, very interesting point of view. The last part is a recommendation made by Bob Plisken when asked about official reports of the US government. He hints towards that paper published in 1969, sorry. So that was last week. Let's check now the previous week. That will be the first, as we started the year with 2 weeks delay. Where is it? Sorry, I lost the other screen. Where is it? It is here. Okay, I see it. That's that one. So that's the main topics of 2 weeks ago. So the first is a paper written by Christopher Mellon that explains how the scientific council that was supposed to be put inside the Congress UFO office has been removed, and why it has been removed, and the role of Lue Elizondo in the works that are being made to push the subject forward. Very interesting. If you want to know what happened behind the curtain, it's written inside this article. Next part is an interview between Kelleher and Jeffrey Mishlove, sorry. So, Kelleher. I have so many pages open. That's just insane. Sorry, I forgot to change the up. A very interesting paper next about the 1994 Lakeshore incidents. A wave of UFOs witnessed by hundreds of people, followed by radar, and you have inside the testimony of the radar operator and policemen that were on the scene. Next one is a fleet of UFO, or a very large UFO seen over the state of Georgia from an Airbus A320. The same week, above the UK, you have 2 other objects that have been witnessed above Glasgow and the aerospace between the Republic of Hare and the UK. And a very interesting paper written by Avilab about virtual realities. It's a quite old theory to explain away the Fermi paradox. The idea is that compared to a material existence, a virtual existence can lift a lot of limitations. You cannot die, you cannot suffer, you can create everything your mind can imagine. So, since a very long time ago in science fiction novels, there were the idea of bunker planets where a civilization could hide inside servers by downloading their consciousness. So you have here a paper written by Avido that talks about this hypothesis. Here another analysis by Christopher Sharp about how Susan Gough, that has been promoted to the rank of Pentagon spokesperson, is trying to block every request for information and trying to master the narrative about the UFO office that has been voted by law under the NDAA 2022. Here you have the Glasgow sighting. The same week, you have another paper published by The Hill, written by Avilob, about how we invest money in scientific research. If you are a scientist, you will learn nothing, but if you are very poorly informed about how scientific research work towards its funding, and how it is difficult to fund a research that can fail, it's a very interesting paper to read. The next paper is an article published by the Drive subpart The War Zone, written by Brett Tingley, about the Navy equipping its ships with high-power microwave weaponry. To all those that know the major UFO cases of the past 70 years, there may be a link to be made between the two research. Then you have the introduction of a new podcast between Ross Coulthart and Bryce Zabel that I highly recommend. We will treat the subject in depth another episode. You have a major piece of analysis made by the New York Intelligencer about how the Pentagon is frightening away the UFO community, and how the UFO community is worried about the fact that the Pentagon takes a hold about the UFO office. So we also celebrated the of course, it was the live stream of the launch of the James Webb Telescope. Everything is fine for James Webb Telescope. He is perfectly in good health and deploying its mirror one after another. A very interesting tweet by Tom Rogan, that he is an investigative journalist. And he says that, "I'm telling you, I will resign as a journalist if I'm wrong. The super strange stuff, maybe not 2019, definitely 2004 Nimitz and 2015 TR is not Chinese." So when you know the reputation of Tom Rogan and the major cases he worked on, it's a really interesting tweet indeed. Thank you. You have then a very cute piece by Chris Lehto for the Portugal News about his evolution from a skeptic to almost a witness. He is one of the most proponent figures today about the subject. He's a former fighter pilot. In the previous news report, he interviewed Leslie Kean. So a very open-minded fighter pilot to talk to if you have some questions to ask. You have it's more an historical paper. It's the proof that the CIA engineered the stigma that Lue Elizondo is fighting today. It's coming from an Australian intelligence report and a very interesting piece of history you can use if you need official papers to talk and to push your arguments in debate. Finally, that week we had the release of a new episode from Ancient Aliens on History Channel. A very interesting piece. I think I'm an art teacher by trade, so there are many things in Ancient Aliens I don't like. That episode was really good. If you followed nothing since 2017, watch that 40 minutes episode and you are perfectly aware of the situation at the time. And that ends that nightmarish talk for me. It's such a pain to talk in full English. I have so much work to do to talk better. Thank you for the 10 people that have been watching me and suffering along my side. I have to work on my English. My God, I'm bad. I'm making my own hair bleed. So thank you very much, everyone. It was just a first shot. Jay, it's J. Christopher King is the responsible. He's the guy that told me to do it, so it's his fault. So I will work on it. I have to speak English much more often, even professionally. It's a requirement. Thank you very much for suffering with me for that half hour, and we will see each other very soon. Goodbye. Thank you for being here.